Welcome to the Investing Podcast presented by Tusk Media. This is Outsider Trading, an audio and video deep dive into the people, places, and things that we find most interesting in the market.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Investing Podcast, Thursday, October 20th, 2016. I'm Andrew Hall, joining me Ben Nye. Ben, good morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you back.
Yes, good to be back in action. Crazy morning yesterday, kind of running around, and all of a sudden it was podcast time.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, you guys got to do it without me. I can't go on screen unshowered, no makeup, hair not fixed, all that, so just wasn't going to happen. But we're here now. We're going to go through the markets, hit on a couple stocks specifically, talking about earnings briefly, and then we're actually going to switch locations and we're going to recap last night's presidential debate. In the meantime, hit subscribe, whether you're on YouTube, iTunes, whatever it may be. We have video up on YouTube. You can watch all our old videos. If you're on iTunes, we have all our archived audio stuff, including some conversations that aren't on video. So check that out, some old stuff with guests like Cody Willard. We did a week on bonds, all kinds of really good content if you're just now finding us. Well, I don't know if it's really good. We have a lot of content, so we'll just throw that out there. But check it out.
Cody Willard was good.
Cody Willard was really good.
I don't know about you doing the interview.
Yeah, he was really good, and he said we were good. So you gotta believe the guy. So we got all that. No matter where you're looking for us, just search Tusk Media. You can find us on Twitter at Tusk Media LLC. Find us on Facebook, Tusk Media LLC. Just search Tusk Media. We're everywhere. Let's jump in. Futures up just a smidge right now. Dow futures up 13 basis points, so that's 0.13%. S&P 500 futures up 0.11%. NASDAQ futures up 13 basis points. Gold up about 10 basis points. Oil down almost 1.5%, just under $51 at $50.86 is where oil is trading right now. But let's just jump in. So again, we got a long portion of this video is going to be really focused on last night's debate. So let's jump in first, though, with some earnings, and we'll start off with Verizon.
Yeah, Verizon actually missing expectations on the revenue. Mm-hmm. They beat expectations on EPS, but revenue missed because they didn't quite sign up as many new subscribers as they were hoping for. And that was driven primarily by lack of tablet growth. Mm-hmm. They did not sign up. They call it net adds, so you didn't get the tablet net adds. The expectation was 580,000, according to Bloomberg, and they actually added 221,000. So that caused the overall miss of about 400,000. So about 300,000 of that, 350,000 was from postpaid tablets, and then about another 50,000 was just a little bit weak on the phones. But that's more of a rounding error than the tablets. So.
Yes.
Verizon actually is selling off in the early hours.
Yeah, it's down. Last I saw, about 2%.
Yeah,
maybe a little bit more than that by now. But
about 6 months of dividend just
wiped out right there. But yeah, I mean, not necessarily disastrous numbers. No. I wouldn't say. Kind of one of those things when we talk about earnings. We've said this over and over on this podcast. But again, that expectation is a big part of it. But especially in some of these niche industries, so to speak, it's not always just the earnings number. We've talked about things like monthly active users. We've talked about net ads on things like Netflix, and with Verizon looking to expand. Really, kind of some of that top line stuff. Really is what people are looking for.
And we like to look at. So full disclosure, we are long Verizon.
Correct.
Right now, and we like to look at things on kind of a long-term basis. So kind of what has changed in terms of that terminal growth outlook, because the terminal growth really determines the value of a stock and the terminal value. So to the extent the terminal value changes, then that really changes our assessment of the company. But right now, from what we know from this earnings report, it doesn't seem like the terminal value has really changed that much. Doesn't really seem like the fundamental value, the fundamental argument for the company has changed all that much. So for that reason, I would guess we're going to be talking about this today. And if we don't really find any other smoking guns, then we might be adding to the stock today.
Right. I think it's a position. It's pretty close to a core holding for us. We like the stock, and I think for people that, whether it's a new client or somebody that's just light on equity and underweight Verizon for whatever reason that may be, I think it's potentially an opportunity to be adding to it. Next company we're going to hit on, and really the last one until we start talking politics, is American Express, AXP.
Right. So overall, they were down 5% in terms of cards. Ex-Costco, they were up 5%. So some actually decent organic growth. Obviously, right. American Express lost the Costco contract. This was a big deal. They said, well, you need the Costco contract. The only reason that people have an American Express card is because of the Costco deal. So they are seeing some decline to that, but they are seeing some core underlying growth as well.
And Costco also, I mean, talk about a storyline that's probably pretty well priced in.
Right.
That's not a new development. Everyone pretty much knew exactly what those numbers were more or less going to look like.
And you think about the negotiation. I mean, American Express, we've seen so many people, Orbital was a great example. Actually, prior to Orbital, the ATK had an agreement with, a contract agreement with the U.S. government, one of its biggest revenue opportunities. When that contract came up for renegotiation, they really went down really low on price and almost made it a loss leader. The American Express deal with Costco, on the other hand, their contract came up for renegotiation and they walked away. I mean, that's a solid move, regardless of how you think that actually ends up playing out. If they absolutely need it, it's a strategic imperative. Right. They were able to walk away, and they walked away because presumably the deal they were getting in that contract was just too poor.
Yeah, you don't walk away from something that's benefiting you.
Right. So
you shouldn't anyway. I mean,
so American Express actually got it up for EPS this year up to $5.90 to $6. That compares to the analyst estimate of $5.63 and completely moves their previous range up at $5.40 or $5.70. So now you're looking at a midpoint of $5.95 for the year, which is a big guide up considering that the year is only one more quarter from that. And then next year they're looking for greater than $5.60 in earnings. Estimate right now is $5.54. So a decent quarter from American Express. I tried to find if they were taking a lot more credit risk. Did not really find that. 90 days delinquent ticked up 10 basis points, but that just that varies over time. Write-offs actually came down. 30 days was kind of in the same range it's been. 30 days delinquent. So not a great deal on the credit risk side that should be ringing a ton of alarm bells at the moment, in my opinion.
There we go. So American Express, strong quarter. Verizon, potentially an opportunity. And we'll wrap up here and we'll switch over to the political party. All right, everybody, political party. Andrew Hall to my left, Matt Kresbach, the unit. Ben Nye, you've already heard from him this morning, spitting some investing talks. Scotty Valiani over here, cuddling up to Garrett Palmer over there. We're going to talk about last night's debate. We're going to try to keep some order. We may even have the Frost man show up, Sam Frost. He is heated after last night's debate. I'm going to start down at the far end with Benjamin Nye. Ben, first impressions, opening statement on the debates.
I thought that this is what Trump needed to do. I think opinion went both ways, but people are saying that Trump didn't do enough, but I don't know what they would have said that he could have done more. So I think that Trump, to the extent that he still has a chance, he did what he needed to do.
There we go. Unit, thoughts?
I really thought that was like the best debate yet. I feel like I'm in the minority here.
I agree.
Okay, I was texting these guys last night and definitely get that vibe.
I think Sam was filibustering our debate. The men of Narwhal. I mean, maybe we can get a screenshot and censor out his curse words or something. But I mean, really, it's like you're scrolling through and it's like bubble, 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 Frost. So yeah, but little frostbite there.
I thought Hillary did maybe not the best she's done, but is it on par what she has been doing? That's probably Trump's best debate. I think, was it Chris Wast? I think he's a great moderator.
Yeah.
But I thought for Trump to win, the only way that would be possible, in my opinion, would be for Hillary to implode in that debate. And I think Hillary's too good at that to implode.
Yeah, I'll jump to these guys and then share my thoughts. Scotty, keep going down the line. Opening thoughts, comments.
I agree with Krebs. I think overall this was the best debate. I think both Donald Trump, came out super cool, super calm. I haven't seen him, period. Not even just outside of debates. I just haven't seen him that calm and seemingly collected. Hillary came out strong, same as she has. Like, I think Trump's definitely been. This is like the peak of his debate. And I feel like of his performance in all the debates, and I feel like Hillary's been pretty standard. So I think Fox News did a great job hosting. I think the moderator was phenomenal. So yeah.
Barrett, thoughts?
I'm just glad that they actually talked about something other than themselves.
It was bold,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, it was an interesting move to talk about the issues during the presidential debate.
Yeah, I think I'll kind of echo everybody here. I thought it was the best debate for a number of reasons. Chris Wallace was a great moderator. Along those lines, I thought he jumped right into substantive issues with the Supreme Court. I think that benefited Trump. I feel like if we look back and watch the highlight tapes, 90% of his highlights from all three debates are going to come in the first 30 to 45 minutes. I heard the analogy on a podcast this morning that it's like somebody shoots him with a tranquilizer, but it wears off after 30 minutes. So that, I think, was to his benefit that he was able to spend those 30 minutes actually talking about things that mattered rather than talking about accusations made against himself or Bill Clinton. So I think that really worked to his advantage. I definitely think it was Trump's best performance. On a relative basis, I think it was Hillary's worst. There were times where I felt like, as polished and as good as she was a little bit uneven sometimes. I thought her response, for instance, to the WikiLeaks and what she said in one of her speeches, I think was the question, her response on WikiLeaks was atrocious. I mean, that was the dumbest. Like, she sounded like she didn't know what the internet was.
Yeah.
And she was like, well, these Russians have hacked our websites and our internets and our onlines are no longer safe. It couldn't have sounded worse. But so I think he rattled her maybe a little bit, but I think in some ways, specifically in a debate format, at her worst and his best in a format of a debate, I still think she's as good as him, if not better. Again, just talking about debate setting.
I completely agree with you saying how they opened it with the Supreme thing, or the Supreme Court instead of the justices.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great question to open that with. I was really glad they did that.
I'd like to hear everybody's thoughts on who has been winning the policy debates and who's been winning the personal debates, because for me, it's a little bit surprising. My view is that it's totally flipped what I thought it would be. I thought, and I think in the first debate, Clinton won both. But I think on net, as we've kind of seen this process evolve, I almost think that Clinton is winning the personal debates, and Trump actually wins kind of the policy stuff, that first 30, 40 minutes. When it starts to devolve into she said that and he said this, then he gets really sidetracked and he gets flustered and he loses focus on what he wants to do. He tried to change that this time. A couple times she went after him with a litany of the vets going after women, doing all this, and then he just kind of he would try to do the pivot, but he still wasn't smooth with it.
It wasn't smooth. I felt like it's a tale of two halves for me, to use the sports cliche. I think the first half, policy-wise, I think he did really well, and I think you'd be hard-pressed to find anybody that doesn't at least give him a tie on those first 2 or 3 topics. But as things start to go into more foreign policy things, where she just has such an experience and an advantage and a knowledge advantage, it becomes very clear. I mean, he talked about Mosul like it's like a product, not an actual city or location. We used to have Mosul, we lost Mosul, now we're fighting to find Mosul, and we want it at a good price. I mean, he talked about it just like, he talks about things that are in a vernacular that just feels very uncomfortable, is kind of the way I feel, especially on things related to foreign policy. And then I think the big hang up I have with him is I feel like he should just mop the floor with her on economic issues.
Yeah.
And you mentioned the pivot. The second most frustrating point for me as somebody who wants to vote for a Republican was when they asked her the question about, open borders and just, an open hemisphere basically. And she pivoted, attacked Russia. He literally said, "Did you see that pivot?" And then he followed the pivot. You know, rather than just reining her back in. I thought that was a really good opportunity for him. That was kind of where you started to see him involved. But I mean, I agree. I would call the policy basically a tie, which sounds like a cop-out. But I thought he won the first half policy-wise. Thought he lost in the second half. I don't know if you guys have thoughts.
Yeah, so I think Trump all around was better about policy. But here's Trump is not articulate, like period. He used Bigly.
He's used Bigly in 2 debates.
Yeah, and he said it like 3 times last night. Like
Bigly.
It's just
so good.
His way of speaking is not ideal. But at the same time, I feel like a lot of her responses are super shallow. Like there's not a whole lot of substance there. She knows all the buzzwords. And part of that's what makes her a good
like
politician.
the intelligence surge. What
yes,
is intelligence surge?
Exactly. And when she kept referring to technology and then not expounding in any way, it was just like, oh, we gotta get our technology up. What?
I really think that's just what makes her a good politician, though.
You're right. No, and a lot of people hear it
right.
and hear these words and think, okay, well, I don't know a whole lot about that, so I'm just going to assume she's saying.
Right.
And I feel like Trump tries to go more in depth, but he's so inarticulate that he ends up just talking himself in circles.
He really does.
He ends up repeating the same things over and over, which drives me nuts. Every time that Trump says, "This is great. This is the best thing.
Yeah.
Trust me, it's one of the best things." Just say it's great. You're talking about the Trump. Just say it's awesome.
Believe me.
Yeah, you're talking about Hillary kept trying to take the jabs at the Trump Tower being made out of the steel, from China. And it's like he had a good response. Well, then make it illegal. Make it hard. I was just doing the smart business move, which he was, but he just didn't. He can't speak well enough to get that point across.
That's really bad. That's kind of like the tax thing. If you're playing within the rules of the game, I don't get why people get up in arms about that. It never doesn't make sense to me at all.
And when Hillary said, "You'll just find a way around it," it's like that's Hillary's problem. That's the government's problem, not the rich people.
Such a nasty woman.
Yes. So nasty.
Interesting perspectives. To give some context to this, early polling afterwards, YouGov and CNN did polls. I don't think Fox News actually did a poll on this. I think maybe because they were actually opposed to the moderators.
Fox News, I saw something this morning
did.
saying that independents are favoring Trump, but I don't think that was immediately after.
Right. So YouGov talked to, I think, 1,500 registered voters. 49% for Clinton, 39% for Trump, based on the debate performance, just who won the debate. CNN had a similar poll, 52 to 39 in Clinton's favor. But of note, that's the closest. CNN's done the same poll 3 times. That's the closest the gap has been. That still seems like a really what's insane is the first one was 60 something to 29. It was crazy. I want to go back to Ben and something you said earlier and to get everybody's thoughts on it. But you kind of said Trump did what he had to do. And I think that's hard to disagree with because debate number 3, the litany of issues that's out there, I don't know how you really do much, but how well did he bring voters in your opinion? Because I'll go ahead and say my opinion is that he did really well for his base, and I have a particular comment that's getting a lot of headlines that I'll bring up in a minute. But I thought he did great with his base. I think he locked them in, but I kind of feel like that's all he's done for the 3 debates.
I think that's all he needs to do.
Where are you getting headlines?
I think.
Where are you getting headlines at?
Like everyone, just what people are saying.
Oh.
I think. I think this is going to be the lowest turnout election since at least 1992 or 1996, and more important than that, I think that the fewest number of people are going to vote for one of the major candidates, probably since the 60s, even lower than the Ross Perot election. I think, who do you go to and say, I'm all in Hillary, I'm all in Trump? I'm not hearing that from anybody. And the thing that Trump has in his back pocket is that his base is going to vote for him. And I think he brought more Republicans in with the Supreme Court discussion yesterday night, and so I think he has that locked and loaded. I think he's going to bring a few more Republicans in, which he needs to do, and I think the Democrats are going to stay away, which is a positive if you're a Republican, because the Republicans just have a structural disadvantage to Democrats, not only in demographics, which everyone talked about, but there are just more Democrats than Republicans. I was looking at a Reuters poll, and they have about a 10-point edge on Republicans nationally. So, in fact, it's almost amazing that Republicans tend to go so tend to be competitive, because on paper they should be.
So the headline that everything, the big takeaway of I've listened to 3 podcasts this morning about the debate, Twitter, probably newspapers out. I don't read newspapers, readings for losers, but bigly the headline is Trump's comments about how he'll wait and see if he accepts the decision of the election. It's being painted as just this atrocity. And my question, I joked about this on Twitter last night, but it's like, do you people not have grandparents who are stubborn? Like, what's the deal? Like, I don't understand, one, why people are generally outraged that a man that's 70 years old might not accept an election. That's number one. Number two, his entire platform has been one run on mistrust of the existing political institution. That's what sparked him. That's what grew the base that you're talking about. Mm-hmm. So, one, I don't think he alienated anyone with that comment. Number two, I'm offended that people are offended by what he said, because this is exactly who it is. It's kind of like when the remarks came out in the 2005 tape. I don't approve of them. I don't approve of someone that might actually be president or might contest the decision and say the whole thing's rigged. I don't necessarily approve of that, but at the same time, this is who this guy is. Yeah. I don't approve of the contents of what he said in 05, but that wasn't remotely surprising. Why are people surprised by this? Garrett, you kind of reacted to that.
Yeah, one thing before it, how funny was it when Hillary, they were talking about that, and Hillary's like, well, he does this all the time, and then he brought up the Grammy or something for the show.
I love that.
That's
exactly. I was like, full disclosure, big fan of The Apprentice here, and I thought it was super hypocritical of her to be like, we need real apprenticeships here, and then you're like, wait, Donald Trump's been doing real apprenticeships. Hillary, turn on a TV sometime. Stop reading the newspaper.
When he said that we'll have to wait and see or whatever. I'm mad because he's a pretty young 70, so we can discount him like 15 years. So if a 55-year-old does that, then I'm just really mad. So I'm super pissed about that.
But what's crazy is how it's being framed by definitely the liberal media of one of the core tenets of our democracy is the peaceful transition of power. Number one, if Trump doesn't win, there's not a transition of power that involves Donald Trump. Let's just accept that and move on. Like, look at who's in the White House and look who's coming in. It's the same party, neither of which involves Donald Trump, at least not in present day.
These type of discussions just play right into what Trump's been saying. Yeah. Because he and Clinton were for an hour and a half talking about, they obviously parted from the issues at some points, but this was the most substantive debate. And the headlines coming out of it, I was watching CNN for half an hour after the debate. I watched CNN this morning. I watched Fox News this morning.
Bold move. Fair enough.
The only channel, interestingly, that wasn't talking about this, and shout out to them, MSNBC, the Morning Joe program, was saying, this is bunk. Yeah. To use the most overly used word, like, this is the debunk. It's over. So last day, but the idea that this is what we're making a decision on the president based off of, when they gave an hour and a half of content to talk about, it's kind of lazy journalism. Honestly.
And that even you mentioned the media, like even Bloomberg's radio surveillance this morning, they asked they had a reporter in Las Vegas, and they asked her what the takeaway from it, and she was like, well, obviously the big storyline is and should be Trump's comment about how he might not accept it. I was like, what? That's
no one's talking about the nasty woman comment.
Yeah. They were in real time on Twitter. Like, Twitter was like melting down. I was like, oh no, this is not a good look. The nasty woman comment, not a pretty almost end of the debate. My one complaint on the debate, I guess it was like both good and bad. I felt like it ended really abruptly. I thought it was going for 2 hours. I didn't realize it was 9 minutes. But for Trump's next to last comment before his closing remark to be such a nasty woman, like real creepy into the mic, while she was saying something that was sure a little bit of a dig at him.
Hillary, you bad girl.
Did he say it real slow like that too?
It wasn't that bad, but it was.
And he did
He was
like
such a nasty
he
woman.
pantomimed spanking, which was real. But so sorry, playing footsie over here with Crips. Such a nasty host of a podcast. But I thought that was a really, really bad look, especially because that was like the next to last thing, and it was in the latter half of the debate, which was weaker. I loved Chris Wallace being like, "Pop quiz, we're gonna go to closing statements."
That was
I didn't
awesome.
give anybody time to prepare. Let's get some closing statements. I thought that was fantastic. I don't know if you guys have other thoughts on just the tone, the direction, and then we'll kind of transition into the last half of.
I was surprised how they actually listened to Chris Wallace cut them off.
Yeah.
Like, they just kept talking when the other.
I honestly
It happened like I want to say 2 or 3 times where all 3 of them were yelling.
Yeah.
Like and not even, it wasn't for a few seconds, then they stopped. It was like, I want to say maybe 10 or 15 seconds of everybody talking on top of each other. Drove me nuts.
But then Chris Wallace said, "I will turn this car around."
Yeah, he slammed the brakes a couple times.
For the most part, though, don't you think it was like more clean?
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It just evolved, and he wasn't arguing, with either.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we maybe, I will say in fairness, we might be giving him a little too much credit because I do think Trump was very intentional in not interrupting as much. I do think that was part of the side of the strategy. So
You
that
should be
makes
able
the
to
moderator
knock it
look
around.
more in control. But I will say, just following along on Twitter and all that, it seemed like he was pretty universally appreciated.
Oh yeah.
A lot. Some very
CNN
liberal
did
friends
do
some very liberal friends of mine were like, "Man, he's killing it." Like they were loving that. Anybody else have other thoughts on the debate before we talk about the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to go and kind of go down the line on kind of the four of the bigger issues that we talked about, and just 1 or 2 sentences. So, Supreme Court, who came out on top on that, foreign policy, especially the Iraq-Syria discussion, the economy, I think we already discussed, but then also this open border deal, like the whole immigration debate, which somehow got on the track of NAFTA. I don't know how that happened.
Worst trip you ever.
But basically, my thought is, Trump won the Supreme Court issue, foreign policy. I think, kind of to your point, Scotty, earlier, I think there was a lot of superficial description on the part of former secretary, but I am starting to be swayed by this argument that we can't just tell people 3 months in advance what we're going to do. And we've done that in the past. The open border discussion, that was just kind of a mess on both sides. I thought both sides lost it.
Yeah, that was bad.
And the way that Clinton pivoted to sharing energy grids, I have no idea how that would work.
Yeah, I want to dig in on that actual speech because she framed that as the context for having these open borders. And that's the kind of thing where it's unless you go download a document from WikiLeaks, which is probably the most dangerous thing you could actually do for your own personal security of your own files. I'm not downloading anything from WikiLeaks, but unless you do that, you don't really know the context of her actual comments there.
Yeah, so I guess Supreme Court, foreign policy, economy, immigration. What would you say, Matt?
I thought for the Supreme Court thing, I thought Trump took a way harder stance.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, Hillary seemed more accepting and she would work it out better, I guess, or something. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
I don't either.
More like a Democrat.
I wouldn't say yeah, I guess. Yeah. I don't know if I would say Trump took over that. I thought that one was pretty balanced. What were the other ones?
Foreign policy, economy.
Foreign policy. I'm going with Trump on that one. I don't know much to add. Trump, baby. What was the last? There's one.
Just the economy.
Wasn't that to end it?
Oh, immigration.
That one's interesting to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I come back on all those topics, Ben, which is a good way to frame it, to kind of this idea of a tie. And I thought the Supreme Court, I would give the edge to Trump because I'm a conservative and he was hitting all the conservative talking points.
Yeah.
That was the moment where you're like, this is what a normal Republican presidential candidate would be saying. So I give him the edge there, even though I'm recognizing my bias, but just because he actually was doing the political thing there.
Yeah.
So I give him the edge on that. Foreign policy, it gets kind of hairy. I think she was hitting more talking points and he was talking in circles, so it's kind of hard to give anybody like a real clear-cut win there. And then one of the things on open border that I wish he would have called her on, he's been attacked time and time again for not providing enough details to her plans. Her entire stance on immigration was, well, in my first 100 days, I'm going to roll out comprehensive immigration reform. And I think we make such a big deal about the first 100 days of a presidency, and there's a lot to be said for that. But the reality is, if you have a great comprehensive plan, let's roll it out now. Let's build on it. Let's do whatever. I mean, in 2007, there was actually like pretty good conservative immigration reform laid out that I think right now a lot of Democrats would have favored, but Bush couldn't push it through. So it's like immigration is such a we've been doing this for decades. Like that's the kind of like, is there really a competitive advantage in an election cycle to share an idea on that? No. So let's roll it out now if you really have it, Hillary. So that's another one where it's just kind of this weird tie. Again, I maybe give him a slight edge there just because he stuck to his guns rather than saying, oh, well, in 100 days. But the element of surprise with it was like pretty gold. I kind of feel like that should have been like his campaign slogan because then he could like kind of use that to cover like everything. Like, surprise, I did say creepy things. Surprise, I am throwing you off my scent because I think I'm going to talk about issues. Scotty, what are your thoughts on kind of
I don't really have anything new to contribute for the most part. I mean, I agree with you guys. I think one thing, the talk on foreign policy I thought was awful. I feel like nothing really got said at all. Granted, I was also watching with 10 guys, so there was a lot of yelling going on at our house. So, like, I couldn't hear everything that was going on throughout the debate. But I just thought that little bit was pretty not great. I feel like neither of them, like you said, Trump kind of talked in circles. I feel like Hillary just hit buzzwords. And then all the talk about Russia was just, I thought, a disaster. Because Trump was just up there saying, oh, I don't know Putin. I've never talked to
not my best friend.
Yeah, he said, and I love it. I think he said best friend too.
He said
not even friend.
My best friend.
Like, he's not in my MySpace top 8. Dang, not a chance.
Putin broke his friendship bracelet.
Yeah. And then Hillary was just super unclear about. I guess this is moving away from foreign policy. I skipped straight. We didn't talk about this, but when Hillary was talking about like Russia playing a part in the email leaks and everything, and like rigging the election, I just thought that was really.
That was such fear mongering.
Yeah, and it was really frustrating to see because she is a little more articulate than him, but ultimately she was saying nothing. It was all completely speculative. Mm-hmm. And then Trump had the right response, but couldn't say it in a like concise way that would make sense and shut her down the way she needed to be shut down.
Watching Trump sometimes in these debates is like, I don't know if you guys ever have like confrontations or things where like the second you walk away you're like, man, I should have said this, that would have been really good. Watching him in real time is kind of like that. You're like, oh, you should have said this. You kind of have that. But Russia is interesting. We'll get to Garrett in just a second. But Russia is interesting too because 4 years ago Mitt Romney got ripped apart for saying that Russia was the biggest threat to the United States. And look at how pivotal Russia has become to these debates and how it's dominated the conversation and been initiated as a real threat per Clinton. She's saying Russia's the big threat. 4 years ago, Romney got ripped apart for that. Garrett, thoughts on the topics?
Yeah, I guess I'll go a little into the economy. It's something that I said, I think, after the first debate, but I'll pretty much repeat it word for word.
We could just cut the video.
Yeah, we'll just cut it and throw it back to the first one. But They talked about taxes and whatever, but neither of them talked about cutting anything. In fact, I think both of them will definitely spend more money. And, Trump needs to come out. I think he will cut taxes, or he plans to cut taxes, but he definitely needs to talk about how they're going to not waste money. Mm-hmm. And so I think he would add to the debt. And then you got Hillary claiming that she's not going to add a penny to the debt, but she wants to give, free college or, student debt cuts or whatever she's trying to do. And I don't know how you do that without adding a penny to the national debt without raising taxes substantially.
It's just as a politician, they can't say like, we're going to cut back on Social Security.
Right.
Like you'll lose instantly.
Right. But that's what's interesting is like at some point the young people demographic, like ourselves included, have to start like actually impacting elections. And I think the reason we don't yet is because not enough people under the age of 40 actually turn out to vote. Mm-hmm. But at some point there's going to be come a time where it's a very popular political comment to say we are going to have entitlement reform so that we don't run out of money. But neither of these candidates were going to go anywhere close to that topic.
I was really surprised that neither candidate, but especially Hillary, did not bring up the issue of drug prices. Because it seems like that's a great target to hit because you're not taking away anything from anybody except the drug companies.
Right.
And you can really scapegoat them. And she's been talking about it too. And there is a point to it. I mean, these drug companies have been raising prices extremely quickly. But yet she doesn't go after that point in the debate. So that was a little surprising to me when they did get on the subject of Medicare.
Especially because it's so kind of on theme with her messaging. I was joking. I tweeted last night. I was like, kind of sarcastically, it's like she wants to destroy corporations, but she's going to help small businesses become big businesses. Yeah. That was like her whole messaging. To be like so in line with her platform to like go after the drug companies, big pharma, kind of attack that.
Or even Trump. I mean, he's the great deal maker. Isn't he going to make a great deal for the American people? Mm-hmm. So like we can actually have lower drug. I don't know.
So let's transition and talk about the next couple of weeks. If you rewind back to the first debate. From the time of the first debate to the actual election, we're about the midway point. I think we're like 24 days in. There's like 19 or 20 days left, depending on what day this actually is. I think it's Thursday. So you're kind of at that midpoint. That's still a lot of time if you consider like how much has changed. When we talked about the first debate, you really had much more of a dead heat. 538 going into the first debate had Trump with a 45% chance of winning. Right now they have him at 12.6. So a lot's changed in 23, 24 days. Starting down here with Garrett, what does Trump do? What does Hillary do to lock up the election and I guess maybe make a prediction?
I think Hillary needs to not do anything, and I don't know really.
It's what she's been doing for 30 years.
Yeah,
it's experience, but it's bad experience.
Such a nasty
I really don't know what Trump could do, because I think if he tried to do something, that 12.6 would be 5% pretty quick. So, I'm really not sure. I have a question for you guys. Do you think that there's going to be something a lot more devastating to Trump that comes out in the media
Yes.
in the next 20 days or whatever?
I do.
Do you think so?
I do.
Are there still WikiLeaks coming out?
There's still WikiLeaks coming out on Hillary, so there could be on her.
And then they had the person in the Trump rallies inciting violence. I didn't hear any of that.
Yeah,
it's
kind of like
those videos were. They had individual people, seeing both ways. And I think I didn't have time to watch all of them. I was just kind of skimming through them before the debate. But I think they talked about even having people dress up as Trump supporters and like causing problems around Democratic events just to make the Trump supporters look bad too. There was definitely, I got pulled pretty deep into the WikiLeaks hole, and there's a lot of stuff that nobody's hitting on.
What's interesting about the WikiLeaks, I will say, is like a lot of people in DC on either side of the aisle have actually come out and said these are pretty like normal conversations in email for either side. Like even some conservatives, they're kind of like, yeah, this is kind of how campaigns work. You view your opponent, whether it's Bernie Sanders or whatever, as enemies, and you do try to manipulate them and destroy them. And like, so a lot of that stuff's interesting. I think both candidates are going to get hit lower than they are. And I think one of the interesting things here is you've got two unprecedentedly unlikable candidates. I mean, Hillary would be the least favorable major party candidate in history if not for Donald Trump. So I think the quick barometer of how is polling heading, whoever is dominating the headlines is probably losing ground because there's such an established unfavorability with these candidates. I don't think that's always the case. I think if flip it, if both candidates are really well liked and Trump is dominating the news cycle, that's probably really good. But they're not. So I think whoever dominates that, and I think for Trump, if you're Trump, you got to be quiet for a little bit. Let some of these WikiLeaks, some of these scandals, some of this stuff, let that actually rise up. Don't give the media anything to talk about. I mean, Hillary Clinton iced out the media for months at a time. Do that. Be quiet for like through the weekend. Say nothing. Go to appearances, talk to the crowd. Script 5-minute stump speech, move on, go to another place, 5-minute stump speech, say the same thing 5 times. I don't care, but just don't give them anything to work with.
That's not going to happen though.
No.
Let's face the facts.
Scotty, what do you think? For Trump for Trump to get back in it, what's it going to take? Or is he in it? And Ben kind of maintains that he is.
I think he's in it. I think it's so. I've said this I think a million times. It's overlooked how many of Hillary's supporters, I think, will not turn out to vote. I think a lot of them assume that it's a done deal, especially in like a lot of the forums I've been reading. They're like people are constantly encouraging, like, please still vote, even if you think Hillary's got it in the bag.
Don't,
because I think a lot of people won't vote because a lot of our supporters are, our generation, they're young. I think a lot of them are just not registered yet, and I think it'll just kind of get away from him. So I think Trump still has a chance. I don't think I think the media is always saying how poorly he's done, but I really don't think he's done as bad as everybody said in these debates. I think what Trump needs to do is I agree with you. I think we need a period of silence, but I also think like there are so many emails. There is so much material there to be brought to light. They need to, like, if you've ever gone on his Twitter, he just like pulls all these random stories and doesn't dive deeply into any of them. And it's almost in 140 characters, you kind of make a headline about an email, and it's easy, even for me, even though I know the emails are legit, you see that Twitter post and you think, that's, I'm not going to give that any credibility. He needs to find a few stories and dive deep into them and shine light and bring those into the light because there's so much there for them to move on.
Like to that point, I would dig in right now on the story about how Julian Assange, the WikiLeaks man himself, has been cut off from internet connectivity in Ecuador where he kind of sought asylum and safety. He's been cut off, and there's a ton of confirmed reports that was part of a side negotiation by John Kerry, Democrat, presumably close to the Clintons, if not personally, then in terms of affiliation. I'd dig in on that and just continue to plant the seeds of doubt with the established Washington institutions, especially a family as connected as the Clintons. Krebs, where do we go over the next almost 3 weeks, and what's Trump got to do, and what's your prediction?
I don't know if I agree with you guys in terms of the voter turnout for the Republicans. I feel like Hillary still has a pretty reliable base, relatively the same size as Trump's. Like, I feel like the women vote is pretty much locked up. I can't imagine women voting for Trump. I think, like Amanda, didn't you say she can't vote for Trump?
Yeah, I don't see my wife voting for Trump.
I think that's the vast majority of women too.
I think he drove that final nail with his such a nasty woman comment.
And then if you assume that just being Hillary or a Democrat, she gets a significant amount of minority votes. I know the minorities love Trump, as he would say, but I don't know.
No one cares
The Latinos
more about
love me. The African Americans love me.
I still find that hard to believe.
We glossed over this, but his comment about bad hombres was
I can't believe he said that.
Pretty borderline offensive and awesome at the same time.
Like you said, if Trump has 12.5% chance of winning, though. I don't know if sitting around and doing nothing is the best route there. I think he has to try and just do something nuts.
I think he's been doing that.
Get even more crazy. I don't know. I don't have anything in mind. But just, I feel like if he just sits around and does nothing, he'll just lose by less, maybe. And I guess with that being said, I'm pretty confident Hillary's going to win still.
Yeah.
So, I know I probably was a little more confident, appeared a little more confident that Trump had a chance yesterday than I actually was. But after that debate, I actually think he has a chance. First reason, I have a couple. The first is that the polls have been tightening somewhat. The Reuters poll among likely voters, not registered voters, likely voters, gave a 4-point edge to Hillary. And that has generally been kind of middle. I was kind of looking at some of the polls yesterday. That's kind of been tracking about the median of where all the other polls are. Rasmussen and the LA Times are generally pretty favorable to Trump, and then you got NBC, Wall Street Journal, more favorable to Bloomberg, more favorable to Hillary. So, but Reuters tends to be a little more in the middle of the road. That's point number one. Point number two, and this is kind of in favor of Hillary, is that Trump supporters are saying this is going to be another Brexit. Polls are all indicating one thing, and it's going to be the opposite. But in Brexit, all the polls prior to a week before were saying that Brexit was going to happen. Yeah. And then you had that awful shooting that completely reversed the polls. But that doesn't really change the fundamentals. It's kind of like we were talking about earlier in this video about Verizon. One event doesn't really change kind of the fundamentals. So I think that
talking investing.
So I think Hillary probably has a structural, probably 2 to 4 point advantage. I think this debate might help Trump move that to about 2 points. I do think that there are going to be just an awful lot of Hillary supporters who do not come out. People who are longtime Democrats are not voting for Hillary. They're not voting for Trump, and they're not voting for Hillary. People who are not voting for Trump will vote for their party. They're not going to vote for Hillary. I think this would actually. So I still have a lot of connections in Oregon, some Democrats, some Republicans. One I know is voting for Hillary. One I know is voting for Trump. And there's probably about, of the people who I've talked to, 15 to 20 in the Pacific Northwest in general who are not voting for either candidate. And I think that, that lack of support in states that should be a lock for Hillary is really beneficial to someone like Trump, because I think that means I think that turnout will be low for Hillary, so that threshold to win a plurality is relatively low. So I think he has to count on turnout. And I don't think there's much that either candidate can do at this stage, especially Clinton. I mean, she's been out there for so long. There's nothing that she can do to make herself better. Trump can hurt himself. I'm not sure he can help himself that much now. I think you're going to see, going into the election, a 2 to 3 point edge for Hillary. And I think that there's a better than 50-50 chance that Trump wins if that's the scenario going in.
I think it's hard to tell. I mean, I have a hard time really jumping on either side benefiting necessarily from increased turnout, decreased turnout relative to 4 years ago. I do agree that there's probably a lot of Trump voters that aren't on the radar, but there's also a much wider gap between Trump and Clinton than there was Obama and Romney. So even if those people are laying low and not saying much to show, you're going to have that. And I also think I don't know very many true moderate Republicans, meaning moderates that lean Republican as opposed to true conservative Republicans. I don't know many moderates on the issues, but if you're a moderate, I think this is kind of a prime election for you to actually vote Democratic. just because Trump himself, he's rough. He's hard to get behind if you're kind of ever on the fence. It seems like this would be the election to go to the extreme. And I think the third party candidates are getting a lot of hype, but I think now is actually where you will start to see some votes leave Gary Johnson, because we've got 2 weeks where there aren't any more major debates, any major 1v1 matchups between Trump and Clinton, and now is the time where hopefully everybody's actually digging in on each candidate and doing some research, and I think they're going to find a really cool, trendy package with Gary Johnson, and they're going to cut it open and find a bunch of air.
Go to HillaryClinton.com.
Go to HillaryClinton.com and you can fact check. But so I think you're actually going to see some of that. You'll start to see some of the undecided start to kind of parse out where they're going one way or the other. And I think we're going to start to see some of the third-party candidates move away from, or voters move away from some of these other alternative party candidates. And again, I just have a hard time seeing if you're currently undecided or currently voting for someone other than Trump or Clinton. I don't know what Trump can do from here on out to get you on board. I think Clinton wins. I don't think it's going to be close. I don't know. I don't think, to Ben's point earlier, I don't think anybody's going to be walking out of that poll like high-fiving each other. Yes, I just cast a vote that I wholeheartedly agree with, and this is the best candidate ever. I don't think you have many of those, but I also think you got a lot of Clinton supporters that hate Trump and will always hate him, and you got a lot of Trump supporters that will hate Clinton and always hate her. So I think that's the one thing we do know. It's just how unlikable both people are. I think that's all I got. Anybody got any closing thoughts? We'll probably do a check-in at some point. I think we're maybe all hanging out to watch the election.
Yes.
Playing some poker. So maybe we'll do a little Periscope when we get to that on November 28th as Donald Trump tells supporters, or November 8th as the real world votes. Y'all have a great day. This is the Investing Podcast.
Tusk Media is a subsidiary of Narwhal Capital Management. Ratings and reviews of Tusk Media content are not to be construed as endorsements of opinions, analysis, or services offered by Tusk or its parent company. The opinions and predictions shared here are professional beliefs at the time of publication. We are not under duress from any of the corporate entities mentioned. This is not a solicitation to take any particular action. Although we are investment advisors, this information should not be considered investment, legal, or tax advice. We strive to be as impartial, insightful, and accurate as possible. We base our opinions, analysis, and calculations on information we believe to be reliable, but we cannot guarantee its accuracy. We can, however, guarantee that our opinions will sometimes be flat out wrong due to a variety of factors. Employees and clients of Narwhal Capital Management may or may not hold positions in the securities detailed and may or may not hold these positions in the future. A full list of all securities purchased, sold, or held during the 12 months preceding the date of this publication can be provided upon request. Unless otherwise noted, all data accessed via MarketWatch or the Bloomberg terminal. Past performance does not guarantee future results. A copy of Narwhal's Form ADV is available at the SEC's website, www.advisorinfo.sec.gov, or from Narwhal upon written request.